Greetings. My name is Ian Thomas. I'm with the Scope magazine, and we are having a conversation with Gracelyn Guyol, author of Who's Crazy Here? A book about holistic ways to treat mental illness. Ms. Guyol,
yes.
Welcome.
Call me Gracelyn.
Gracelyn.
Thank you.
First off, I want to say that I have not finished the book, but I've gotten into it a good bit, and I am impressed with the work that you've done collating all the dynamics, the moving parts, how you've broken down to about 2 parts in the book, and then you have 3 phases that you address. But before we get too much further into that, I'd like to just open up the conversation to your story.
Okay. I got here through fear, actually. Like most people, I just used conventional medicine all my life, and I really was not aware of any other option. And in 1994, I was, my gynecologist discovered that I had rapidly growing breast cysts and tumors in my breast. And so I had surgery and had them removed, and within 6 months they all grew back. And so I had surgery a second time in 12 months, and I was very fortunate that the tumors were all benign, and the cysts I had removed because they can block the view of a tumor. And so so I had a little bit of time, but it was clear to me that having surgery every 6 months in my mid-40s was not an option. This was not a way to continue. And so I talked to my gynecologist and said, well, what can we do to prevent this? And he said, oh, well, we really don't do anything because none of these growths were cancerous. And so it was, well, we wait for cancer to develop before we do anything, and I didn't think that sounded like a very good plan.
Not at all.
So,
Not at all.
So I started to look at other medical treatments, and became aware of a practitioner who was a naturopathic doctor here in Mystic, Deidre O'Connor. And so I consulted her and said, these growths started developing really rapidly. And so I believe there must be a cause. Will you help me try and figure out the cause? And she said yes. And so we embarked on the process that I described in the book, basically, of giving my cells all the nutrients that they need, through vitamins and minerals and supplements, to make sure the cells get all the essentials they need to function right. And then we did the process of eliminating every toxin that we could think of, every chemical that, through detoxification and through eliminating the daily input of chemicals through foods and through cleaning products in the house. I went to the extreme. I changed my hair care and shampoo to all plant-based, my skin care to all plant-based, put earth-friendly cleaning products throughout my house, and I've always been an organic gardener, so that was part of it. But it was eliminating the huge influx of toxins that we take in through the polluted air, through our polluted food chain, through polluted water every day. And then you see what starts to happen. And what happened is that my energy went way up. And people started coming up to me and saying, what are you doing? You look wonderful. And I changed to an anti-inflammatory diet, which is not in this book. It's in my first book, but it's on my website now. That's why.
The title of your first book is?
Healing Depression and Bipolar Disorder Without Drugs. So that came out in 2006, and Who's Crazy Here addresses steps to recovery for 9 different mental disorders. That just addressed depression and bipolar. And that one had lots of science in it. So practitioners loved it. Patients came to me and said, we have a hard time reading all this scientific long stuff, even though I wrote it very simply. Could you just tell us the steps to take without all the science? So that's this book. It's the easy read.
More like a manual,
right?
Perhaps
right,
a handbook.
Right.
Yeah.
So in working with Dr. O'Connor, and then also doing my own cleanup of my own environment, and I began to get a lot better. But 18 months later, a new tumor appeared, and I had it biopsied again. It was benign, but I knew that there was something that I'd missed. And so I finally went off a drug that I had been prescribed 1 year before the tumor started, which was Wellbutrin. It's an antidepressant. And my mother had been bipolar, and I was diagnosed as mild bipolar in 1993. And didn't know anything about holistic medicine, so I was prescribed this drug. I started taking it. I seemed to feel better. Wasn't dramatic, but and then a year later the tumor started. So I thought the only thing that still I'm taking in, a chemical that I know of, is this drug. And my bipolar was not dangerous. I'd never been hospitalized, but cancer might be. So I decided to taper off the drug under the supervision of a doctor and see what would happen. And that latest tumor disappeared in, I think it was 2 months. It was a very short period of time. And so that told me that because the growth started a year after I began the drug, and the latest growth disappeared so quickly after I stopped taking it, to me that was the triggering cause. And later I learned out the chemistry behind why that was the cause. It was due to one of the genetic errors that I had. So, I just decided I'm not going to take any of these drugs, and I gave myself 2 years to figure out alternative treatments that would be successfully, because the mental disorders, the moods and the symptoms get worse with age because your body's not able to handle as much stress as it does when it's younger, and so. It took me 2 years, and I found holistic, non-drug treatments. First, one that ended my manic highs in 4 months. And then, but the depression still remained, and that was the surprising part. Doctors always say that the two are connected. You can't treat bipolar disorder just treating the mania or just treating the depression, because I actually liked the mania because it wasn't that high, and I said to my doctor, well, can't you get rid of that and just get rid of the depression and leave me this little high? And he said, that's why people take drugs. So but he said, no, it doesn't work that way. You have to treat the whole thing. But it turns out that they had different causes for me. And so so we ended the mania using vitamins, minerals, and specific amino acids. And then 15 months later, new research came out of Harvard, interestingly, on fish oils and how beneficial they were to the brain. And they did clinical trials with bipolar patients, and they stopped the trials and put everybody on fish oils because they were so beneficial. And that's the research that most physicians today rely on when they prescribe fish oils for any of the mental disorders. And when I started, because I'd cleaned my body system up and my environment up, and I was eating a healthy anti-inflammatory diet, and I was taking supplements to optimize the cell function, when I started taking the fish oils, my depression lifted in 48 hours. It was incredible.
That quickly?
That quickly. Wow. Because I'd done all the preliminary work to clean up the whole organism, put it that way. So that's my experience, and in the process of ending my bipolar, I also ended all my arthritis because the anti-inflammatory diet that I use, high inflammation contributes to all mental illnesses. It also contributes to cancer. It contributes to heart disease, and it contributes to diabetes. So everybody should be on this anti-inflammatory diet. and it's on my website, www.crazyrecovery.com. So, so that's my experience. And then you had some other questions.
Well, yeah, to follow up on that, how did the costs compare for you personally? Between
Yes,
treatments?
the money angle. That was pretty interesting too. The average bipolar person has one hospitalization a year for an out of control episode. Those cost $11,000 each, average. The doctor's appointments, the clinic, the lab work, and traveling to Chicago to a clinic at that time that was the leading one using holistic means, cost me $3,000 to end my bipolar symptoms. So, and I had done the drug route before, and so I realized that these drugs cost $200 or $300 a month just for one drug, and a lot of bipolar people are on 2 or 3, and the co-pays alone for those drugs are going to be more than what I'm spending on natural supplements. And the reason that you don't hear about the solutions of natural supplements is that they can't be patented. So they're inexpensive. I averaged $150 for the first 10 years a month for natural supplements that have kept my bipolar mood swings in check since 2002. As I'm getting older, I'm having to add in a few more antioxidants. So I'm now averaging $200 a month on supplements that keep me well. But my weight dropped to a healthy weight. I have wonderful triglycerides, no cholesterol issues, no other illnesses. I take no prescription meds. I'm now 65 years old. Can you imagine what the savings would be in our healthcare costs if people started using holistic treatments to cure their illness, to actually get well, instead of treating the symptoms forever? This is the wildest.
So simple.
It's so simple, and it's so natural.
Yeah, it's all diet and supplements. It's all stuff you can get over the counter. You don't necessarily, you consult with a naturopath.
A naturopath, or there are other holistic, there's some doctors now that are called functional doctors. These are all, there's no standardization yet on what the government calls complementary or alternative medicine, CAM, C-A-M. But there are practitioners calling themselves functional. They're traditionally MDs that have gone the holistic route in part. Naturopathic doctors are the ones I recommend first because their training is to use only all natural substances and practices to heal all illnesses. So that's the first choice. But around the country, it's hard to find these. And then there's orthomolecular practitioners, and this is a name that came out of a Canadian organization founded by the man who developed a lot, Abraham Hoffer. I talk about him in this book in the schizophrenia chapter because he enabled his schizophrenic patients, who usually are institutionalized in their late teens or early 20s for the rest of their life, and his were able to function, get education, hold jobs, have families, and live a very normal life. About 75% of his patients could. And so that's in here too. So my book is meant to be a resource.
Excellent, yeah.
And
there was also, I noticed a section in here where you gave advice on how to seek out these people online and how to check out their bona fides.
Right, I give websites. This book came out in 2010, and I need to update it, but most of the websites are still valid for how to find a practitioner. And so you put in the keywords, either naturopathic doctor or orthomolecular or functional medicine, and you put in your zip code, or some of them I give the websites for their organizations, and you can go to the website, click find a practitioner, and then put in your zip code, and up will pop those practitioners in your area. And the practitioners, the naturopathic doctors, are not terribly expensive either. Usually it's less than $100 for a standard visit. Usually the first visit is about twice that because they spend a long time taking a complete history.
Right, and actually that ties into something else I wanted to mention. One of the things I was struck with as far as the angle of this naturopathic
Treatment.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
is that it goes straight for the causes. It addresses the causes as opposed to the symptoms.
Right.
Yeah.
And conventional Western medicine treats the symptoms. And why did they do that? Because they have, well, everybody goes to a doctor and they walk out with a piece of paper and it's a prescription for a med, for a drug. Because today's doctors, they didn't used to be trained this way, but today they're all trained to write a prescription. And they treat the symptoms with a drug, and it may reduce the symptoms and make you feel a lot better. But then you get another symptom over here. So you're getting pains in your knee or something, so you take a drug for that. And then you're having some other digestive ailment, so you take a drug for that. And then you're having migraine headaches, so you take a drug for that. And pretty soon you're taking all these drugs forever because they're only treating the symptoms. They're not even looking for the causes. Oh my gosh, there should be a cause?
Turns
So
into a
it's like,
game of medical whack-a-mole.
well, yeah, and it's like, this is not connected to this or this.
Yeah.
I mean, everything's connected. Your blood goes through your body within a minute. So everything is intimately connected. And the holistic approach is the only one that doctors ask you for all your symptoms of everything that you're experiencing, everything that's wrong with you, which is why the first appointment takes some time. And then I call it Sherlock's process,
Yes,
you know, like a
that's great.
detective. You have to try to figure out what's the cause. And the real clicker is the causes are different for each person because we're all genetically unique. Even in a family, you can have very different expressions. And there are, and they're learning a lot more about the genes. I had 2 genetic disorders of the 4 that have been known since the 1960s that contribute to all mental illnesses. And you will never hear about these from any other place except Dr. Hoffer and the orthomolecular doctors seem to be aware of it. So that's in my book under the genetic chapter. And the solutions for these genetic errors are vitamins, minerals, and specific amino acids at specific levels, because the genetic errors cause you to have deficiencies of certain elements that the body needs to function.
So the treatment basically breaks down to about 3 phases you mentioned in one of the chapters. And the first would be provide optimum nutrients, which we discussed, and then eliminate potential causes. That's the Sherlock process.
Yeah, and the causes are more than just, we didn't talk about all the chemical overload that I talk about in the book, and then what I call frankenfoods. Foods that are basically chemicals masquerading as food. So what you want to do is you want to eat as close to the original form in food that you can get. And here I understand everybody's economic and living circumstances are different. So I tell people, do the best you can do. But basically, don't eat fast food. Don't eat genetically modified organisms. Eat organic when you have a chance. Grow your own if you have a chance. Picking it this afternoon and eating it for dinner, it means it's much more alive. So do the best you can do, but I do have a chapter on brain basics, and diet is really the foundation of health. The only fuel your body has is what comes in your mouth. Well, the air that comes through your nose too. But in terms of fuel, it's the food that counts. So do the best you can in terms of cleaning up your diet and getting that basic covered.
Yeah, the opening for the second chapter is a great analogy, I think.
Go ahead.
You write, maintaining a brain on what most Americans eat today is like constructing an oceanfront penthouse from cardboard, tin foil, and Scotch tape. The least little wind will cause a catastrophe. Our multitasking, stressful, unhealthy lives are causing mayhem in fragile brains. That was a powerful sentence. It just sums it all up as far as my perspective, what I've experienced observing and existing in this culture that we live in. It seems it's a challenge.
That may be why 1 out of 4 people in the world will experience a mental illness. So if you're experiencing one, you're not alone. You can find treatment and you can recover, but it requires a process of healing. It's not as quick as a pill. but the rewards are really great because you get your life back, and the hope of that is what motivated me through all the years of research that it took to get to this place. And using this book and finding a good practitioner, it won't take you 2 years. Usually you'll notice a big improvement within 2 months. So I urge you to explore it.
One more thing, back to the money, not to be too focused on that, but a fascinating little tidbit in the introduction I noticed. You discussed how the medical industry works now in concert with some government programs, how there's a sequence of events, I guess, that the treatment for using standard treatment.
Well, for Medicaid and Medicare, the government pays for the drugs, basically. And so the pharmaceutical, the income from pharmaceutical drugs, not just, did I say in here, was that the mental?
I guess the national numbers were there in 2008. Antipsychotics, the nation just in general spending spent upwards of $14.6 billion on antipsychotics, and anti-seizure drugs was $11.3 billion, and ADHD drugs were $4.8 billion.
And then there was $9.6 billion for antidepressants.
Yes.
So this was a total of $40.3 billion, half of which is paid for by the government. So when we look at healthcare costs, mental illness is the single most expensive category of illness. It exceeds cancer, apparently, and that's a shocker. But it's because people, once they get put on these medications, whether they're 4 years old or whether they're 40 years old, they are told they have to take them for the rest of their life. And this is not so, but it's the way Western doctors are trained by the underwritten by the pharmaceutical industry, of course.
Fascinating.
And so it is. I don't believe in the theory that this is a big conspiracy. I think this is an evolution. Medicine is always evolving, and over the last 100 years, we've become enamored with pharmaceutical drugs and thought that they were the next cure. And so medicine just went that way, and we went way too far. We're not paying attention to the basics and what the body needs, and no body is deficient in drugs. I can tell you that.
No.
So I see this as now there's a scramble to come back to center, where I believe I do take antibiotics if I get a Lyme tick. There's nothing known holistically that can counteract Lyme. And so antibiotics, when they came out at the turn of the turn in the 1900s, they were viewed as unbelievable substances. And that really pushed the flurry to go off and discover more, because it saved lives and it was dramatic. So I don't view this as a huge conspiracy. I view it as an evolution that got out of whack. And now we're learning that it's going to, and I'm thrilled that the recession actually has caused this to have to come back into whack a lot sooner, because we can't afford the medical system we have. It doesn't work very well, so there's a real reason why it has to be revised. And the economic hard times are forcing that to happen.
A critical eye to be cast on the budgets.
So I think we will come out ahead, but we've got another probably 10 years of transition, which is 9 years too long.
Indeed. Well, Gracelyn, thank you.
You're welcome.
For joining us on the couch.
Thank you for inviting me.
Who's Crazy Here by Gracelyn Guyol. Available through website www.crazyrecovery.com.
Right.
Yeah. And is it on sale at stores in the area?
Some of them have it in Stonington. I don't know if the new London stores do or not, but they can certainly get it. Also, I have 13 television shows that I've just put up on my website. They are on Restoring Health Holistically. And there's a list of the 13 different shows and the topics. And in those, instead of me doing all the talking, I invited holistic practitioners to join me and talk about specific topics. And so those just went up on the website today. So by the time this comes out, people will be able to find them.
Yeah. One last quick question. How's your research enlightened you or informed your opinion on medical marijuana or marijuana usage in general, as far as painkiller or the medical marijuana stuff?
I haven't really explored it because it's not one that's been recommended for mental illnesses, and that's been primarily my focus.
Yeah.
But I lived in California in the 60s, so of course I tried marijuana like everybody else. And it had a dramatic impact on me to the point that I didn't use it.
Okay.
Because it muddled my brain so much. And I'm very tuned into my body, which is part of it. There is a psychiatrist in California who's been on PBS, Dr. Amen, and he does scans of people's. He's conventionally trained, but about probably 15 years ago, he started doing specific scans of brains to see what areas were not functioning properly. And he almost lost his license because he was doing such a radical thing as wanting to have more information about how his patient's brain was functioning, and that wasn't part of regular protocol.
Yeah.
But now, and what he saw when he was scanning the brains of alcoholics and drug users is that their brains had huge holes in the brain, like Swiss cheese. And your brain doesn't recover completely from things like that. So my advice is you only get one brain, and so you really need to be careful what you do with it. And since it runs all of your other functions, I would be extremely cautious about recreational drugs, period. If I don't like pharmaceutical drugs that have a particular purpose, I couldn't very well recommend. For medical marijuana, I think it depends on the situation. For people who are dying and close to dying, they're given any level of morphine to just make them happy as a compassionate way of treating them. And so I think that medical marijuana may fall into that category in some extreme cases, but I'm just not encouraging young people to use it for recreation.
Okay. Very well.
Okay.
Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. My pleasure.